Well, welcome back to the second day of our September Board of Regents meeting. I hope everyone had a good night and you treated Butte well and Butte treated you well. Just want to extend our gratitude to Les and Stephanie for the reception last night. We just concluded our meeting with the Board of Education hosted by Governor Gianforte. We've got a pretty busy agenda this morning. So we'll look forward to resuming this meeting now with a federal update by Executive Director Thigpen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here to provide another installment of the federal update. I'm not sure anybody truly knows what's fully happening in Washington, but I am happy to provide a high-level update on some key pieces of legislation that we're tracking in the office and kind of maybe how we can engage there. You may recall that I provided an update to the board in May, so I thought at this time I'd really just focus my remarks on updating the information that I had provided at that time. You may recall that in May, President Biden had only been in office for a few short months, and we were just really starting to see the initial stages of his key legislation and where his priorities were going to be. And I think now we have a little bit better view of where things are at, especially for higher education. So first I'll touch on the status of the infrastructure bill. This is obviously a huge priority in Washington. It was originally proposed as the American Jobs Plan, which you may have heard about. Among numerous other things, the original proposal included substantial funding for research through the National Science Foundation. That was pretty exciting for the higher education community, but it didn't last long. These pieces were eventually removed from the bill, which is now really more focused on brick and mortar type projects, things like roads and bridges, funding for broadband initiatives, measures to make cities and towns more resilient to impacts of climate change, and so on. The Senate did approve that bill on August 10th, and it's now waiting a final vote in the House, I believe, which leaders have said would occur by the end of September. But as you can imagine, that's really going to be quite a scramble. For one, not to be too hard on them, but it is Washington, and two, the Senate doesn't return from its August recess really, I think, until next week. So it will be sort of a mad dash here at the end of September to get that approved. There are certainly opportunities for higher education and our campuses within the infrastructure bill. The commissioner has specifically asked me to look at that, and we have been in touch with the campuses, the VPRs of research about those pieces, and are getting some good information there, as well as with our partners in DC who are tracking this very closely. The VPRs are really tied into this issue and have been really helpful, and I know that President Bodnar and President Cruzado are also aware of a lot of these opportunities. So we'll be tracking those and kind of looking for ways that maybe the universities within the MUS can benefit from the infrastructure bill. The other big piece that's moving forward that has taken a lot of attention, I guess, but probably has a lot more opposition, is the budget reconciliation bill put forth by the Democrats. Unlike the infrastructure bill, which really got a lot of bipartisan support, this process is going to be a bit more controversial. I talked about this bill at the meeting in May, but it is the bill that's going through the budget resolution process, so really would only need a true majority to move that along. And as I mentioned again, it will be considerably less bipartisan. The package includes provisions for tuition-free community college, which I'll touch on in a second, increasing the maximum Pell Grant award, investments in HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, student success grants and investments in educators, workforce development and job training, research, and investments in college and university infrastructure outside of the infrastructure bill. So I do want to clarify that while that bill is not specifically directed at higher education, it certainly does include many provisions that would benefit us here in the university system. The House Education Committee recently unveiled its piece of the package, so we do have a better look of what the actual programs would look like. The House Education Bill includes funding to cover 2 years of community college tuition, and would, as I mentioned, extend support for minority serving institutions such as tribal colleges. So they're also following this closely. The community college piece is known as America's Promise Act, and I know that many of our community college partners here are tracking that closely, and perhaps could also weigh in if they would like. That program would be funded with a combination of federal and participating state funds, using a formula that is based on the median cost of tuition and fees. And from what I can understand, the feds would pick up sort of the first year of that, and then in subsequent years, the percentage of the federal amount would go down and the state amount would go up. So it's a formula. We can certainly get more information on that piece if you're interested. The budget reconciliation bill does not increase the amount of the Pell Grant as much as the Biden administration had originally, I think, wanted. President Biden's plan proposed an increase by about $1,400, and the House Education Committee's proposal provides a more modest increase. Now I believe it's at $500. So a real decrease there, but still an additional $500 is proposed in that package. The House Education Committee also significantly reduced a proposed $62 billion investment for college retention and completion grants to $9 billion over 7 years. Still a very large amount of money, but I think not nearly as much as what was originally proposed. So those would have been funds that could go to efforts similar to the one that was discussed yesterday with Project 10. But of course on a much larger scale. This would be funding for things like emergency aid grants, mental health services, and other comprehensive support services that are generally understood to help students graduate, especially on time. The final piece that I wanted to touch briefly on is a bill that both of your presidents here are tracking and are very aware of too. It's the United States Innovation and Competition Act. It originally started as something known as Endless Frontiers, which I know many of you have heard about as well. This bill would significantly increase federal investments in research. The House and Senate have passed different sort of competing versions, but each version envisions some sort of consortium among our 5 EPSCoR states, which is North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Idaho. So we are having some initial meetings of that about that potential, and it sounds like there might be a vote by the end of the year, but that piece is obviously sort of, I think, on not the back burner, but a little bit lower on the priority list in terms of infrastructure and the budget reconciliation bill. On the other piece, like the regulatory front, we are still tracking various items from the Department of Education. Top among those will be revisions that are probably going to come out regarding Title IX. They've announced that they are going to do a negotiated rulemaking and revising the rules that came out in 2020, but we don't have any dates on when specifically that's happening. As far as I know, I think they mentioned just within the next year. The department is also holding some hearings in the next couple of weeks on financial aid and student debt relief. And so we will be sort of just listening in to that, seeing what's going on there. So I'm happy to keep the board updated as much or as little as you want on federal activities, and look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Executive Director Thigpen. Any questions or comments from the board? Yeah, Regent Nystuen.
Thank you, Chair Lozar. And this is probably not a Helen question. It may be more as a Tyler, Deputy Commissioner Trevor question. About what % of our students across the Montana University system receive some type of a Pell Grant award? It seems to me it's a very high number, and the legislation that Helen talked about with regards to Pell is a really big deal.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Regent Nystuen, it's 40%. It's kind of wavered over between the 45, higher 30s over the years. At two-year colleges, it's upwards of 70%.
Yep, that's a big deal. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Trevor. Any additional questions or comments? Well, thank you again, Executive Director. Certainly, this is a great added function that the Commissioner's Office has added, and we really appreciate you tracking this legislation that really matters to the university system. We really appreciate the update. So thank you. With that, we will move on to our final committee, the 2-year and Community College Committee. I know there's a couple items. I'll turn it over to Committee Chair Regent Nystuen.
Thank you, Chair Lozar. I'd be ably assisted this morning by Deputy Commissioner Tessman. We have 2 items to discuss today, information on your agenda. One of the first things I want to do is do a kind of a shout out to the 2-year leaders that are not here with us today, so mostly from the embedded colleges here and so forth. I know they're probably streaming in on this, and we wish you were here in person, but we understand. So with that today, Brock and I talked initially about maybe doing a flip-flop on item B going first, then item A, which would be the 2-year work plan. With that, what I'd like to do is start out with the GEAR grant in developing academic collaborations. With that, Deputy Commissioner Tessman and Jackie.
Thanks, Chair Nystuen and members of the board. I'll invite our Director of Career and Technical Education and Dual Enrollment, Jackie Treaster, to join us at the podium, and I think she'll have 2 of our campus leaders at the podium in a moment. And I'm looking at this agenda for our committee, and it always strikes me that our 2-year Community College Committee tends to be information heavy, fewer action items. I want to point out for the board members, especially newer members, there is a lot of kind of 2-year and community college action happening, but sort of just as a matter of placement, we put things like new academic program approvals within the ARSA committee. So we heard about the substance abuse and addiction program at Great Falls College. We heard about avionics and cosmetology at Helena College yesterday as part of the ARSA committee. And so just to remind you that there is a lot of action and sort of new programming taking place there. It just is placed in the ARSA committee. These items that we talk about within this committee tend to be sort of particularly distinctive to the 2-year and community college group, and the leadership you mentioned, Chair Nystuen, has been incredible even in these past months, spending a couple days up in Kalispell for a nice planning retreat hosted by President Karras. We do have a work plan discussion that I hope we have time for after this presentation, but I think it's wise for us to flip the agenda. You'll notice as we do get to that work plan discussion that our priorities for the year, things like innovation in workforce training and development, new strategic partnerships, thinking about innovative delivery mechanisms, all of those things are embodied in the presentation you're about to hear with respect to these GEAR dollars that were spent over the last year. Final point before I do hand it over to Jackie. These $2.2 million, it's a lot of money. No way around that. But I think when you hear about the 19 projects that were funded with these dollars and the impact that's come out of those projects, you're going to be really impressed with respect to the bang for the buck that our 2-year leaders managed to generate out of the grant. So with that, Jackie, I'll hand the mic to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Happy to be with you today to chat about the GEAR grants and some of the lessons that we learned and give you some updates. We did talk about these grants last September, and so now we're kind of on the other side where the projects are completed. Well, at least the funding has been spent. Some of the projects are ongoing, and so just want to give you some of the outcomes from these exciting initiatives. So I am here with Dave Kruger, the Dean of MSU Northern, Dean of the College of Technical Sciences, and Tom Gallagher, Dean of Missoula College. These projects were really executive-led. It took a lot of work from the 2-year leaders. It was a really quick turnaround when we found out that we had the funding available, how it was supposed to be spent and what areas we could spend them on, created a really quick RFP, and really the 2-year leaders had such quick turnaround, worked with their faculty and staff, and just I mean, we really could have highlighted every single project that was funded, and you all would have been impressed and pleased with the outcomes. But we did choose 2 projects to highlight for you today, and just excited for you guys to see the incredible, innovative, and efficient work that our 2-year campuses are doing. Next slide, please. So just a reminder what the GEAR funds were. It was the Governor's Emergency Education Relief. This was funding that came through the CARES Act. And Governor Bullock at the time really charged us with focusing on workforce training and remote delivery. So those were the 2 areas that we had our campuses focus on when they were sending proposals for the funding. It was $2.2 million, so as Brock said, that's a sizable amount of money. But when you look at the amount of awards that we awarded and didn't get to fund because we had so many great projects that were proposed, we were able to stretch that money across the state, and I think you can just see how incredibly efficient our campuses were with the funding. We did end up funding 10 projects, 6 MSU projects, and then we had 3 awards for the community colleges. And while there were more awards and more actual funding sent to campuses, you can see that 80% of the total funds requested from the MSU side were awarded. And then you can see how many partners that are listed for each area. And those partners were not just partners, they were across the board, same with MSU and same for our community colleges. So the campuses really did an incredible job collaborating, and I think everyone ended up pretty happy with the projects that we were able to fund. Next slide. So we did have 4 funding priorities that we asked our campuses to consider when they were putting their proposals together. The first was collaboration, so we really wanted to highlight cross-campus collaboration anywhere that our campuses could work and share resources, share faculty, share staff. We encouraged them to do so, and we really saw a lot of success with that. We wanted our campuses to focus on upskilling, so folks that were already in the workforce and may need to go back to get some additional education, to retool, upskill, we wanted them to focus on those areas. We wanted to focus on credentialing, and so you'll hear from Dean Gallagher that credentialing not only just of students but of faculty as well. And then we wanted to focus on remote learning. We really wanted to make sure that quality programs were available to students regardless of where they were located in Montana, and so making flexible delivery was definitely a part of these funding priorities. Next slide. So first I'm going to bring up Dean Kruger from MSU Northern, and he will talk about his program highlights of his GEAR grant.
Chair Nystuen, Commissioner, Regents, thank you so much for this opportunity that you've given me to share a little bit about what we've done with our GEAR grant. I was extremely pleased to be able to submit a proposal for a grant. As I've shared, I think with the group before, career and technical education is my passion, my background. I'm just pleased to be able to be working for MSU Northern as Dean of the College of Technical Sciences, because all 10 of my departments and what I do there evolves around career and technical education. When this grant came around, I was very excited to submit a proposal working with the Department of Labor and Industry. We had some things in mind that were going on, and we felt that this particular proposal and grant fit perfectly with what we're trying to do. So our initiative was called the Accelerated Education Initiative. It was intended to bridge barriers such as financial constraints, family commitments, or other barriers that impede potential apprentices or students' ability to gain employability skills and training here in Montana. The Accelerated Initiative provided expedited opportunities for workers seeking to upgrade their skills or to reskill to compete in a changing economy, potentially that was impacted by COVID-19. This would happen through the use of remote delivery options to expand or deliver training to our workforces here in Montana. To let you know a little bit about what happens currently, or before we got this initiative going, apprentices in Montana have to complete 7,500 hours of work experience and 24 credits of education. only 35 to 40% of these apprentices are completing their pathway to journeyman, primarily because they're not getting that education completed in that 5-year period of time that they have to complete. They want them to complete it in 4 years. So working with DLI, this was an opportunity we had to accelerate that and help them get through that. Our goals for this initiative was to improve the completion rate of the apprenticeship program and state licensure in key workforce industries, specifically with this grant, electrical and plumbing apprentices. It was to enhance access to training in high-demand fields that pay well, which we know they do, through online distance, remote delivery, collaboratively with our secondary institutions and post-secondary institutions here in Montana, bringing it around the state. The launching pad for this initiative was to restructure this apprenticeship courses, these electrical and plumbing courses that are delivered correspondence, and give them a face-to-face component and a hybrid component. So through part of the dollars we had, we were able to take and create some portable studios, and we're able to create hybrid learning opportunities that we can deliver to these apprentices throughout the week, that they can actually watch an instructor. It's kind of cool because we got 4 different camera angles, and we have a camera pointed right down at a demonstration that the instructor's doing for them, so they can demonstrate it. They can see what's going on a PowerPoint. Remember, before this, they just had a book. It was all correspondence. So they were to watch that. The most important thing we do, though, is we bring those apprentices in one night a week for 4 hours. And we have an adjunct who is a licensed electrician or a licensed plumber, and they're working with them, answering their questions and demonstrating what we've talked about that week. So ultimately, these apprentices are going to be able to get through 8 3-credit courses. They can do that in a 2-year period, or if they want to stretch it out over 4 years, they can do that. We wanted to accelerate it because some of our employers out there, their apprentices are behind the 8 ball on getting this completed. And we want to be able to, if they don't finish it within the 5-year period, the Department of Labor will come in and they'll lose that apprentice. They won't be able to finish and become a journeyman. So we want to help them to do that. These courses were offered in 10-week segments, 10 weeks in the spring, 10 weeks in the fall. We started last spring with a 10-week segment. As I mentioned, they can watch the stuff online. They can meet in person. The cost per credit is $765. When they're done, with all 24 credits, or these 8 classes, they will receive a certificate through Workforce Apprenticeship, Director of the Department of Labor and Industry, and they will have 24 credits in their pocket that they can use down the road if they choose to apply to an associate's degree in electrical or plumbing with us at Northern. So we're giving them some options, and sometimes things happen, and they get their journeyman license, they work, they get injured, they can't continue to do that. They have a great start to this. So the results, we started last February, the 16th of February. We had 67 apprentices originally start when it was all filtered out, and those who can complete. We had 50 apprentices who fully participated in the online and lab sessions. 50 of the 50 students who attended and participated in the classes, 48 successfully completed the program. That's 96% completion rate. Remember what I said before when we started? That's only at 35 to 40%. We were excited because the 2 first classes, our codes and our math courses, is typically what kicks them out, and they just don't get done. We started with those courses, and we got that 96% of them through it. We gave surveys to the students following courses 1 and 2. The plumbing program was rated 4.3 on a 5-point scale, with 100% likely to recommend to other apprentices. The electrical program was rated a 4.5 on a 5-point scale, with 94% likely to recommend the accelerated program to other apprentices as well. The majority of the apprentices responded very positively to the group learning. This is their comments: group learning, hands-on experiences, and in-class shared work experiences. It's what they weren't getting before. They were encouraged and motivated by the classroom structure, as well as access to each professor's background or instructor's background and experience. In conclusion, the Northern Advanced Apprenticeship Program benefited those who wanted to finish their related training with 2 years of remote learning. with approximate cost of $6,120. The investment is worth the 78% higher wages for those who successfully complete this training. For every worker entering electrical and plumbing professions, 3 workers are retiring. For every worker coming in, 3 are retiring. So it's a crisis that we have to get as many apprentices through this program as we possibly can. We can't afford to have only 35 to 40% becoming journeymans. We need that 80-90% to become journeymans to help fulfill that role. So it's never a better time to become a plumber or electrician. This program was successful. Tuesday, I hauled the electrical and plumbing trailer down to Bozeman. Belgrade High School, they're gracious enough to allow us to use their facilities in the evening there at Belgrade to continue the program. I met with the next cohort of students there. They're super excited to move forward. Booming numbers in Billings and in Bozeman. So we're proceeding with semester 2, and we foresee this becoming the norm rather than the exception of the way of educating apprentices here in Montana. Thank you for your time, and if you've got any questions, I'd love to entertain them.
Thank you, Dean Kruger.
Question. So a 78% increase in their salary. Can you quantify that for us? How much were they making per hour before? How much do they make after? And then what progression are they on, for the next stage?
Yeah, apprentices will typically start, and it all depends on what they're working and who they're working for. But many apprentices will start out $25 to $30 an hour, some $35 an hour. But when they finish their journeyman, they're making about $50 an hour or higher, again, depending on who they're working for and where they're working at. If they're working within the union, they'll even make more dollars. And I didn't mention that to start with, but this program is primarily for non-union apprentices out there. The union does have their own training, but over 80% of those companies are non-union companies, so we have quite a few of those out there. And just to let you know, we have about, of the non-union apprentices, we have about 200 coming in every year in the plumbing and electrical. And so this is about 25% that we're getting to start with on this pilot project that we're doing, and we hope to increase that.
Thank you. And, Brock, just seems like, when we think about the portal, this would be such a good example of kids, self-identifying in that direction of interest, that there's a real-world example of, doubling your salary. Actually making a living wage in Montana at a young age.
Regent Lozar.
Good point, Regent Bao. Just a follow-up on that in terms of, trying to match, potential interest in the market with some of the programs and work we're doing with the portal. And just, can you speak to how you were able to attract 50 apprentices into this program? It seems like a really high number, a huge accomplishment, and maybe there's something that we can learn for other similarly situated programs.
Yeah, it's called relationships. We have relationships with these companies out there, and we spent some time visiting with them, went down and talked to them about the program, what benefit they have. The companies would come to us anyway and say, what materials do we have? These correspondence materials, they weren't getting through them, so they really wanted to work on a better model. Department of Labor, that relationship with them, the Department of Labor has specialists in each of our areas who actually work to help motivate those apprentices to get through. Motivate's a strong word, but to get through this. And so they were thrilled that we have a new model that potentially could help get more apprentices through the program. I failed to mention another opportunity, I think, for the future, and that is the Department of Labor just came out this summer with a new pre-apprenticeship program for high school students to get started. They'll work up to 500 hours, and they can actually start these courses that we're offering. They can be in those now and get that head start just to get them into the pipeline. We know we have to start with middle school and high school. They're doing the same thing now with electrical, plumbing, welding, and other areas. So we're excited about the pre-apprenticeship program. I think that might even open the door for us. I'm looking at the future for dual enrollment in that area that we could explore down the road. For now, we just appreciate the opportunity to work with the Department of Labor to provide whatever we can to meet their needs.
Regent Dombowski.
Thank you. Outstanding. So do we know once they get through and are employed how long they stay? And maybe we don't, maybe that's not necessarily our issue, but I think from an employer standpoint.
Yeah, once they become a journeyman, we don't see a lot leaving. There's so much growth, and because there's so much growth, I was down in Bozeman. You can just pop up and you can see new electrical programs opening, new plumbing programs opening. So these journeymen, and as I was talking to some of the owners of the company, they love their journeymen, but as the journeymen move through their progression, become master electricians and master plumbers, they're going off and starting their own companies. So they're losing their journeymans, and so they need more apprentices in. One of the other hurdles that they have out there is the number of apprentices per journeyman or master that is out there. They need to have, it was 3, they're going to go down to, they're supposed to be lowering that to 2 journeymen per apprentice. So if they don't have people become journeymen finishing, they can't bring more apprentices on. So it becomes a real problem that we have out there. So the Department of Labor is working at ways that they can better get more apprentices in the program as well, but we're excited about working with them.
Regent Sexton.
Thank you, Chair Nystuen. My question has to do with, you mentioned the Union Apprentice Program. I've heard, just kind of colloquially, that a lot of people who apply to that program, or some who aren't accepted, to have to do with their lack of math skills. Are you working with that program to pick up those students who aren't eligible or don't get into that?
If they are not in the union and don't get into the union apprenticeship program, and they go to work for anyone else's apprenticeship, we work with those students. So we work with DLI, and we have for a long time, with education. All right, so we'll get all those students. Math is one of the big hurdles that they have. And that was one of the key reasons we wanted to start out on this grant with math and codes to start with. And then the success of that, we're pretty confident when we move through the other remaining 6 courses after math and codes that we'll get them through. Some in 4 years traditionally, and some that need to be accelerated will be done in 2.
Awesome. It sounds amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner Tessman.
Thanks, Chair Nystuen. And members of the board, I just want to point out, I think that Dean Kruger's project here is kind of a standout among standouts. Regent Bao, to your question or comment about the portal. Look, we want the portal to address all the programming in the Montana University system, whether it's a history PhD or whether it's an accelerated apprenticeship. But this kind of program is what we want to be the focal point. We feel like the portal can actually benefit students who may not understand exactly what the program is that they want to study, but they understand what their career goals are, what they like to do, what kind of work and career style they want to have. The portal is going to be designed so that students can start with that. I like to work with my hands, like working with math, quantitative reasoning, or like technical skills, whatever it is. And actually allow them to go from that starting point to a list of available programs throughout the state, so that a student, near Havre or in eastern Montana doesn't think, gosh, if I'm considering the Montana University system, I've got 2 choices. One is to be an engineer in Bozeman. The other one is to be, a creative writing major in Missoula. And of course, I'm generalizing and stereotyping there, but we have work to do on that front. And I think the portal helps us really highlight the full range of training and programming we have in the system. It's so impressive. And Dean Kruger, I really commend you on this. I have a question. It's a bit of a prompt, and we didn't really script it, but these are one-time only dollars, and the proposals were all designed around that concept. What's required with respect to sustainability for this? I mean, the results are there. I think there are more disciplines where this is potentially quite useful. So what's the deal?
Yeah, the one-time only dollars are done. And so now what's going to make this successful is we offer this for credit. So these companies and these apprentices are paying full credit now which we're able to sustain the program by hiring adjunct instructors, getting materials down there through the credit that is being generated by these students. So as long as we have a apprenticeship population that needs the training, we should be able to continue that. I might add as well, a potential bonus, my mind was going how we're bringing plumbing, let's say, down to Bozeman and Billings and Great Falls. 24 credits of classwork, just like we offer our classwork on campus in plumbing and electrical. If these individuals in these communities wanted to take those 24 credits of plumbing and they went to, let's say, Gallatin and got their electrical or their welding classes and gen ed courses, we could potentially put them in through a degree in pipe fitters, because our pipe fitter program is a combination of plumbing, welding, and gen ed. And so there's opportunities, I think, not only working with apprentices, but to working with our other colleges around for some joint programs that we can actually work together on. So that's going to be a bonus down the road, I do believe.
Thank you, Dean Kruger. With that, Dean Gallagher, Brock, Jackie. Hello, Dean. Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you so much, Chair Nystuen and Regents and Commissioner, for giving us the opportunity to talk about some really exciting things that are taking place. And Dean Kruger did a remarkable job describing some of the things that are taking place at Northern. I'm going to mention we were very fortunate at Missoula College to have several gear activities taking place, and two others to mention, and just to show the diversity of these. We had our Job Site Ready program, which is a statewide effort orchestrated by Professor John Freer, and this program was developed in partnership with the construction industry. And it's aimed at educating the next generation of construction trades professionals and helping to solve the housing crisis that continues to come up across our state. Another gear related activity at Missoula College was with legal studies. So at Missoula College we have a very distinct and wonderful program that's recognized by the American Bar Association. And it's the only one of its kind in the state. And so we're able, with gear funding, to make that accessible using the Quotely course sharing platform that we learned about earlier yesterday. So this program of distinction is now available across the state to multiple colleges, and it just kind of, again, identifies the great diversity we have with this. Many thanks to my colleague Jackie Treaster, because everything I want to talk about is up on the screen there, so nice job, Jackie. But I want to recognize some collaborations here. So this particular effort really dealt with cloud computing and cybersecurity, which is computer science and information technology, but it's a very specific focus for what is really some new careers that are available. Cloud computing, for instance, has been the most highly sought after technical skill for the past 5 years, according to LinkedIn. And then when we look at our cyber workforce, there's currently 730 openings across the state, and nearly 500,000 across our country too. So these are areas that are very high demand. These are areas that graduates get great wages for as well. And they're needed here in our local community, they're needed across our state, and they're needed across the nation as well. I also want to recognize we have Director Clark in the audience here in Bitterroot College, and Dee Bowman over at Helena College and Highlands College, and Dean Vanderveer. We're really great partners in putting all this together. This isn't a singular effort at Missoula College. We also had some really great faculty that these relationships that are forged through a project like this will continue to work together. So Vic Valgenti at Missoula College, Brian Steinwald at Helena College, Rita Freeborn, and John Swallow at Bitterroot College. So we're really excited to kind of talk about this. Things that were done. One, we talk about upskilling folks that are going out in the workforce. Well, our workforce needs to be upskilled as well. And so we had We had 6 instructors from 4 different institutions that either renewed or gained new industry-recognized credentials. And they were kind of state-of-the-art technology credentials from Amazon Web Services and a Computer Technology Industry Association, which provides Department of Defense industry-recognized credentialing for cybersecurity. Other activities took place: course development. We rebuilt courses, we enhanced courses, and we put them in a format that they could be delivered remotely with remote technology, and what a timely effort that was. Accessibility through course sharing now. We had Helena College students taking Missoula College courses, and we had Missoula College students taking Helena College courses, and it was thanks to a new technology and having that course sharing ability using the Quotely platform. We also launched the very first cyber range in the state of Montana. So we talk about high impact teaching practices, and all of them have kind of a common element of experiential learning. And so the cyber range is a place where that takes place. And just to briefly explain it, way that works, on day 1 we talk about cyber security breach. And then day 2 we go in and we experience it, and students actually get the hands-on experience in a team-based activity where they can step into a networked environment and actually experience what an Apache shutdown attack looks like, or whatever it is. And then they come back the 3rd day and kind of do a debrief. Like, here's what happened, here's how we responded, was it good or not so good, that type of environment. So we launched that, and we're really excited about that technology continuing on. The way we launched it was very novel. We scheduled a series of open houses this spring, and we had a really mixed cohort. So we had instructors from other 2-year and 4-year colleges. We had students from 2-year and 4-year colleges. And we also had high school students and high school teachers. So we had a pretty good cohort that were engaged in putting together the cyber range for us. Right? And then all these activities have helped us formulate a new concept for the state of Montana in crafting a cyber hub. So kind of a one-stop shop for cyber workforce education, very specialized, and really to help as a launching pad to distribute this across all of our institutions. So with that said, be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Dean Gallagher? Very good.
I didn't do that good a job, did I?
Yeah, good job. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Okay. Welcome back, Director Treaster. Hey, Jackie.
Thank you so much. So just really exciting outcomes. Like I said earlier, we really could have brought anyone up from any of the programs that we funded, and you all would have been just as pleased. But really happy to be able to highlight both of those programs. As far as next steps go, and this will kind of help get Brock ready to talk about the 2-year work plan. These are a few things that we're going to be focusing on as we're wrapping up Gear Grants and thinking about the lessons that we had learned. We want to continue that cross-campus collaboration. That was really successful, and that really meets that need of making sure that we're serving all students in Montana, and that we're not asking every student in Montana to just move to a new location if they're interested in a certain program. We can deliver those in flexible ways. We also want to make sure that we have more industry engagement. That is the key to making these work. We want our industry partners to be a part of our process every step of the way. We want them to help us write curriculum. We want them to be involved with work-based learning, as far as apprenticeships and internships, or even just job shadows, or coming to talk to a class. They're really important partners for those areas. And we want to make sure that they're letting us know what credentials they want students to have when they graduate. What skills do they need to know when they complete their programs? And we want to focus on access and flexible delivery models. So again, making sure that quality career and technical education is available to all students in Montana, and students that are adult students, gender non-traditional students, single parents, and students in remote locations. We want to make sure that we're serving them as well. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. Happy to
Questions
stand
for
for any
Director
questions.
Treaster? Regent Rogers.
Thank you so much, and thanks for bringing forward those examples. It's so nice to really get our minds wrapped around it. So can you remind us how long the GEAR funding lasts for and next steps once that funding runs out?
Sure, absolutely, Mr. Chair, Regent Rogers. So GEAR funding wrapped up this past June 30th, so it needed to be spent by the end of the fiscal year. As far as next step goes, it sounds like we do have a promising proposal going through the ARPA Workforce Committee, and Brock can certainly talk more about that. I think that he's more plugged in than I am, but we are looking forward to having more opportunities to continue this type of work with some additional funding.
Other questions, comments? Also should shout out to the other campuses that were also involved.
Yes,
with the GEAR
absolutely.
funding too.
The faculty, the leaders, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just incredible job from everybody.
Okay. With that, let's pivot over to the work plan for the two-year community college committee this next year. With that, Brock, would you like to cue it up for us?
Sure. Thanks, Chair Nystuen and members of the board. I decided I wanted to get the award for the simplest slide, the plainest slide. So apologies for just the word document.
If you're colorblind, you will be challenged by this.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And Director Treaster just sat down. She passed on a lot of accolades with respect to these GEAR grants, and she certainly deserves a lot of credit for that as well. There's well under a year for us to secure these funds, develop a request for proposals, solicit those proposals, and secure them from all of the campuses, review and assess them. And Jackie built this kind of multidisciplinary team from the Office of Public Instruction, the Department of Labor and Industry, campus partners, and produced a sort of really rigorous process for review, which ultimately led to those 19 projects being funded. And I think actually because of the work Jackie and her team did on the process, we got really competitive projects. That's why we have the really great outcomes to show for it. So a lot of good evidence of kind of bootstrapping there that I think really embodies the two-year campuses and the two-year leadership group that we have. This work plan that's in front of you, I'm not going to read through it. You can read through it as well as I can read it to you. But I thought I might offer a couple of highlights and then see if there are questions. We'll be talking about this for the whole year, so I don't think we have to exhaust all of this material today. But a couple of highlights. You'll notice that we've got 4 priorities for the coming year. And these were all generated, I think, largely through that 2-day retreat I mentioned up at Flathead Valley Community College in early August. The top priority is something that I think we forget sometimes, but the importance of, board education or board engagement on what exactly the 2-year and community college mission is in Montana. And imagine, we have these campuses, which by and large are really small campuses, really spread out with very thin administrative staff and faculty staffing. Yet here's what they do. When we hear about common course numbering and transfer protocol, that's 2-year and community colleges as much or more as it is their 4-year partners. If we think about the college access mission, 2-year and community college, career and technical education, that's almost entirely at the 2-year campuses. Not all of it, but most of it at the 2-year campuses. Dual enrollment, growing dual enrollment is one of our priorities. That happens through the 2-year campuses. Certainly when it comes to workforce and economic development strategies, through things like the GEAR grants, that's the 2-year campuses. And it really is one person or a small group of people wearing many hats. Dean Erdman got up yesterday and introduced herself as the Chief Executive Officer and also the Acting Chief Academic Officer for Great Falls College. Now, Great Falls College is not tiny. There are a lot of students, a ton of programs, and you have one person really juggling all of this. Their mission, and I know you all know this, but their mission ranges all over the place, and it's a huge responsibility. Includes also community engagement, adult and continuing education, We've got some ideas to work with the Department of Corrections on education for the incarcerated, and 2-year colleges will be right at the front of that as well. So I just kind of hammer that home so that you appreciate, again, that there's a lot of activity happening behind these committee agendas, which tend to be kind of information heavy, and that there's a lot of resourcefulness in our 2-year system, the same way that there is among our 4-year partners. The other priorities there, and I do apologize, they are color-coded, and tough to see, though. Emphasizing workforce and economic development. We've talked about that for the last 2 days, and certainly we've talked to that well before this board meeting. It is, I think, our first substantial priority for the year. Enhancing statewide partnerships, that is between campuses, but also between all of our campuses and the governor's office, the OPI, Department of Labor and Industry, and maybe most important, industry partners. Director Treaster mentioned the promise of this proposal we have working its way through the ARPA Commission on Workforce Transformation and Economic Stabilization. That would allow us to build out a series, maybe as many as 10, of industry partnerships that in many ways resemble that partnership between the University of Montana and ATG Cognizant. So really getting industry to the table, asking them what kind of training and skills do you want to see in your next round of hires, and then actually working with them to support a 10 or 12-week training program so that by the time those trainees get out of the program, they have everything they need to be exceptionally competitive in an interview with the sponsoring industry. And I think it's been well said. President Bodner is around somewhere. I have heard him say it before. I believe there's a 100% placement rate with that ATG Cognizant partnership. I don't know whether it's always 100% if we build 8 or 10 more of these, but I do know we have willing industry partners, and we have certainly the need as a state to produce high-paying, more high-paying jobs with highly skilled employees. This kind of partnership is the way to get to that point. So the statewide partnerships is an initiative that really involves a number of different facets. And then lastly, the innovative delivery and credentialing. Director Joe Teal, who's not here, will talk about the Quotley program more in November, I trust. It did come up a bit in this meeting. That's largely been based on our 2-year campuses as well. And talk about innovative delivery. It really is a mechanism for us to get more workforce training opportunities, more academic opportunities to more students across the state, regardless of what their home institution is. Credentialing, the certificate through the Accelerated Apprenticeship Program, other micro-credentialing opportunities we have, especially stackable credentials, where a student in Dean Kruger's program can pick up those 24 credits, hit the ground running, get a great start to their career. Gosh, if in 2 or 3 years they want to come back and study for that associate's degree, they're halfway there. That's going to make me a lot more likely to jump back in if I know I'm already halfway to my next goalpost rather than starting from scratch. So we have all of these initiatives in place. I feel like there's been a charge for the board to sort of energize action on the 2-year and community college front. I think we'll have an action item for you to consider in November, perhaps around prior learning assessment in ways that we can recognize better military experience in education and training, structured educational training that may not have been credit-bearing in the past, but that we can translate into credit for students who want an accelerated start to their degree. We have good work happening in this committee, and it's because of the 2-year leadership group, which is filled with different personalities representing different types of campuses with different governance structures, but is all pursuing this shared mission, which is complex, but a mission that I think they're successfully accomplishing. So looking forward to a great year. Certainly happy to stand for questions on any of these items. Chair Nystuen.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner Tessman, would you touch on micro-credentials? That was a subject of our retreat, and the growing importance of that among our 2-year campuses and so forth, largely driven by the demand from students, prospective students.
Sure. Chair Nystuen and members of the board, happy to. And this could be a full meeting unto itself, the topic of micro-credentials. But think about it this way. if you imagine a student pursuing a longer term degree option, so an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or beyond, it is helpful to have the name of that major and BA or BS or MA or PhD next to it. But do we really understand the different skill sets that have been picked up along the way in pursuing that degree? If we as campuses, as a system, are able to better articulate the skills and knowledge that students or trainees pick up while they're pursuing larger certificates or degrees, and actually recognize them with anything from a badge to a full-on credential, it helps them on paper or in person articulate what they bring to the table in a job interview or as they're applying for further study. And that's simply for students that are already pursuing that longer-term certificate or degree. What about students that don't want an associate's degree right now and don't have 2 years or 4 years or longer for a graduate degree? Micro-credentials allow them to get in and out of the Montana University system much more conveniently and in a way that works for their educational goals, their professional goals, their home life, maybe where they're physically located in the state. And if you can pursue a 12-credit or 15-credit micro-credential, articulate that skill on your resume or in an interview, be able to leave and work for a while, and then return, and you have those credits in your pocket. So again, you're hitting the ground running towards either a larger scale certificate or an associate's degree. It helps us get to a place, and I think this is an important point, if I can leave you with this takeaway. If we want to expand access and promote success for the students we're inviting into the system, we have to make sure that engaging the Montana University system is not an either-or proposition for them. It's not about, well, do I want to study or continue working? Or do I want to move to this other city or stay where my family and friends and work arrangements are? More and more, we're going to have to make the MUS a kind of both-and scenario. I can work and study at night. Or actually, maybe I can engage in work-based learning and be working, get paid, pick up credits along the way. Maybe I can study for a while, leave, take my next career step, and then decide in 2 or 3 years I want to come back, and it'll be seamless, or as seamless as it possibly can be. So that micro-credentialing, I think, is a great indication of flexibility within our system. We need it all over the place, but in the two-year system in particular.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Tessman. With that, though, come some challenges, I think, from the campus community, and that has largely to do that campuses are funded largely based on full-time equivalents, FTEs, and in a transitory type of a environment with people coming in for micro-credentials, there's a rub there as far as are we adequately funding those campuses for the ability to deliver what the consumer ultimately wants, the student?
Chair Nystuen, members of the board, exactly right. And this was a very specific theme that came up at our retreat in Kalispell, but has been on the table for a couple of years. And it's a tough one to conquer, right? If you look around the country at the K through 12 level or post-secondary, we haven't really found a better way than the credit hour or FTE to track activity. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but we've had a hard time getting beyond that. We need to, if we're going to promote this kind of rapid training, industry responsive curriculum. Some of those micro-credentials, they don't involve credit. We talk about it in this committee as non-credit workforce training. And this might be an arrangement that a two-year college has with a local employer. The employer approaches them and says, hey, can you put together a 5-week program primarily on the weekends so that I can upskill some of my welding crew? And our two-year colleges are, I think, very responsive to those requests. In many cases, they initiate those relationships. How are they paid for? And moreover, how does the two-year entity get recognized among this group for that as a form of really important activity on their campus? Those programs generally involve a program fee for the students or the employers or both, and that makes sense in most respects. But if we're looking to lower barriers for entry and invite industry partners and invite trainees into the system, we need to lower the cost for them to join the MUS and participate with us in these programs. And we also have to recognize that there are startup costs. You can't snap your finger and sort of build out a new cyber range or a new welding facility. So if you're just thinking about it as purely market-driven, purely a self-support model, the reality is the actual cost of these programs is much higher than, in most cases, what a student, trainee, or employer is really interested in paying. So some kind of outside injection of funding would certainly help us grow programming in this area. And I think that there are some federal opportunities. Sometimes we do find industry partners that are really willing to sponsor that launch cost. But I think it would be something for the board to consider over the next year, to think about some kind of pool where for a few really high priority areas we can help facilitate the startup, at least for programs that we know will be sustainable over time.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Questions or comments from the board? Regent Sexton.
Thank you, Chair Nystuen. Deputy Commissioner Tessman, could you explain a little bit more about the aggressive approach or more aggressive approach to prior learning? And I have a follow-up after that.
Chair Nystuen, Regent Sexton, thanks for prompting a little bit more detail there. About a year and a half ago now, maybe even a bit longer, the regional accreditors, no longer regional, but our accrediting agencies across the country were allowed to, if they want to, lift the cap of credits that used to exist for prior learning as to how they count towards a degree. It used to be 25%, so a student couldn't use more than 25% of the credits they needed for a degree from prior learning. And that cap's been lifted by the NWCCU, our accrediting body, and that means that we have the opportunity, if we like, to lift the cap that currently exists in the Montana University system. We're still at that cap. To me, that seems like an interesting pursuit. We need to make sure that we maintain rigor and quality as we kind of consider taking the leash off of prior learning assessment. The military is a great example of extremely well documented, very standardized training that students can come to a university system with, and generally it's pretty easy to recognize that as prior learning. But there are all sorts of other forms of organized learning and knowledge that students accumulate. Some of it isn't as well documented. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try to recognize it, but we've got to make sure that we don't just say, hey, you can show up and let us know what you know, and we'll just figure out how it works credit-wise. We need a system to be built around this, and I think our two-year leaders are really well-positioned to put together a proposal so that we can sort of intelligently and strategically lift the cap and provide more opportunities through prior learning assessment.
Thank you. Yeah, on that note, I just want to mention, and I know we've talked about this before, and I think this is a really great opportunity actually for maybe a more centralized approach to prior learning. And I speak to this only because of, for again, what my experience was, which isn't the only experience. There really are very high transaction costs to a student getting prior learning assessment that's not a military student. At least that was my experience. So I think, and it might put something of an undue burden on some of the smaller campuses to have to provide those resources to all the students who might wish to take advantage of this. And so I think this could be a good opportunity to look into having, a more centralized approach of somebody who really specializes in this and can, and students can work with. So, thanks.
Thank you. Regent Buchanan.
Chair Nystuen, thank you so much. I think I have questions about every line item here, but I'll hone in on this. So I live in Red Lodge, and we're about to complete a $6 million CTE building. I also hear the governor stating that's a strategic priority for him. What is our status in the CTE space and dual enrollment? Are we already in that space? Do we see that as a specific priority? What would this board need to do to elevate that as an elevated priority? I'd love a little update on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Nystuen and Regent Buchanan. We're very much in that space. Generally, I think I've stated this, career and technical education funding in Montana generally comes in through our federal Carl Perkins grant. So the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education, the Board of Regents is actually the eligible agency. The money comes in, and Director Treaster, one of her many jobs is to help manage all of those dollars. It is about $65 to $70 million every 10 years. So it's by far the biggest source of funding for career and technical education in Montana. and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have to jump up to the podium, but I think it's about 35 to 40% of those dollars stay at the post-secondary level. The rest goes to the K through 12 world, and we work with our partners at OPI to distribute those dollars to schools in the name of supporting all sorts of career and technical education. Dual enrollment falls within that category. Now, not all dual enrollment is career and technical education, but it's increasingly the proportion of courses that are taught in our dual enrollment setting in Montana are career and technical education courses. I think we may have gone from the low to mid 20% to the low to mid 30% in the last 4 to 5 years. It's expanding. There are some barriers there. Some of the facilities required to teach some CTE courses are expensive. I mean, congrats to the community of Red Lodge. That sounds like a terrific facility. There are some others like that around the country, but that's outstanding. For some of our smaller high schools, the idea of a welding lab or other sort of work-based learning, hands-on learning opportunities, especially in the trades, it's an iffy proposition. They may or may not have access to that equipment and technology. The Perkins Grant actually helps a lot of schools purchase that kind of equipment and technology. But if we're attempting to grow the number of CTE courses that are offered in that dual enrollment setting, two options: increasing investment in equipment and technology so it's more widespread, or increasing course sharing, online instruction, so that students that live in schools or that study in schools that don't have that equipment physically nearby can still study through various online options, and then maybe either in a concentrated stint visit a location that does have that equipment and technology, or have the equipment and technology come to them. I mean, we do have things like the mobile welding truck up at Great Falls College and other opportunities to think about bringing the CTE to the schools. So there are some barriers there on the CTE side, especially for our rural and remote schools. But I think that with some additional resourcing, it'd be possible to get that 35% or so of dual enrollment courses in CTE up closer to 50. So it's about half and half split.
Chair Nystuen, thank you. If it wouldn't be too much, I'd love to have an assessment just to see how many credit hours earned we are doing annually in that space, just so we know where our benchmark is and baseline. Appreciate that feedback.
Other questions or comments? Regent Rogers.
Thank you, Chair Nystuen. Speaking of rural, I just really appreciate the innovative delivery focus on this work plan. In a conversation I was having with Director Teal regarding e-learning in the ARSA committee, we know that the home-based aspect of a lot of these online modalities exacerbates inequality, especially in our rural state with gaps in connectivity. And I was so appreciative of the GEAR grant's focus on helping with internet access, device access, like a safe space that's more conducive to learning. And as, I think that this innovative delivery approach is obviously the wave of the future and something that we need to be really competitive in. And it's more a comment, I think, because I know there's a lot of other areas that OCHI is working on to increase equity and access. But just my focus in this committee will continue to be, how do we ensure that we help our rural communities come along with all of these exciting opportunities in the university system?
Regent Dobrowski.
Thank you, Chair Nystuen. Just to, I would say, pair onto that. So, rural, think about that healthcare question that's out there. Because I think for CTE, sometimes I hear, plumbing, and I appreciate all that. In fact, can understand why we need that, but there's got to be sort of that stackable credential, getting that healthcare person in. I pick on Eagle-Acca all the time to be invited in and to make that easier. So that's just a plea. But on the other side, the other comment I would make is, I do think from a board education standpoint, the 2-year committee really hasn't probably been as well talked about, and I just am so appreciative to be on the committee. But I just think the work is just tremendous, and I think anything that we can do to be educated more and be advocates out there would be extremely helpful. So thanks for all of your leadership, and thanks for all the work.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, that wraps up the two-year Community College Committee at before 11:45. Thank you. Turn it back to you, Chair Lozar.
Thank you, Chair Nystuen. I just want to piggyback on Regent Dombrowski's comments. We certainly appreciate your leadership, Bob, on the committee, and Brock, to your leadership, really, scheduling your retreat and kind of really diving into some of the top priorities for the committee and the to-year system in the state of Montana. So we really appreciate all the contributions. Look forward to moving a lot of these items forward and these discussions forward over the course of the fiscal year 2022. We'll transition right now to public comment, and of course I will, I believe, turn it over to Jasmine. Jasmine.
Thank you, Chair Lozar. This meeting is open to the public in person and remotely. We encourage anyone wishing to give public comment to do so. We will begin with public comment for anyone here in the room, and then move to those who will be giving public comment remotely. For those joining by phone, dial 1-346-248-7799 and enter the meeting ID as shown on the live stream feed. Press *9 to raise your hand. For those of you joining via Zoom, please use the Raise the Hand button found at the bottom of your screen or in the participants panel to indicate that you wish to give public comment. The host will lower hands in order and ask to unmute. Once unmuted, please state your full name and then proceed with your comment. If you run into any technical issues at any point, please email Jared Smith at jsmith@montana.edu for assistance. Jared is on standby to assist you. Comments can also be submitted in writing via email to me, Jasmine Casanovas, at jcasanovas@montana.edu. Comments sent will be shared with the board members and included as part of the official public record.
Thank you, Jasmine. So we will entertain public comment, starting with public comment here in the room. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? All right, not seeing any public comment. We'll move to public comment remotely. Jasmine?
We do. Bradford, please unmute and give your public comment, state your full name, and give your public comment.
Good morning, Regents and the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education. This is Bradford Watson, Chair of the Faculty Senate at Montana State University. Yesterday afternoon, the Faculty Senate met and discussed a resolution which was unanimously passed, and I would like to read that into public record here this morning. The Faculty Senate of Montana State University Bozeman thank the Board of Regents and the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education for all that has been done to keep the campus community safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. We strongly support continued efforts to enact evidence-based strategies to mitigate the risks of COVID-19 for students, staff, faculty, and the wider community. First, we ask the Board of Regents to require vaccination against COVID-19 for students, staff, and faculty. Second, we ask the Board of Regents to require masks according to CDC guidance, specifically for everyone in indoor spaces, while Gallatin County remains an area of substantial and high transmission. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Is there any additional public comment?
Not at this time.
All right, we'll give it one more chance. Any additional remote public comment?
Not at this time.
All right, well, thank you, Jasmine. We're going to transition to taking action. We have a number of action items in front of the board this meeting, starting with the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee. I will entertain a motion to approve action item A, which is conferring a honorary doctorate at the university, or at Montana State University, for Mr. Taylor Brown.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? All right, seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move on to action item B in the Arts Committee. Action item B is conferring an honorary doctorate at the University of Montana to Brigadier General Colleen McGuire. I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Regent Nystuen. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board?
Casey.
Yes. Regent Rogers.
I just wanted to say I deeply appreciate the thoughtfulness of the letters of support. What an incredible candidate that you brought forward to us today, and the fact that you had a 4-star general also writing a letter of support did not go unnoticed. So thank you very much. Excited about this one.
Excellent. Thank you, Regent Rogers. Are there any other discussions, corrections from the board? Is there any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Right, we'll move on to action item C, request to plan proposals. There's a suite of programs that we discussed yesterday. Before I entertain the motion, I just wanted to make one note that within the suite of programs, we are going to remove the BM in Sound Design and Technology at the University of Montana. We'll keep the BFA for Sound Design and Technology, and I know the University of Montana will continue to do some market demand research as well as get perspectives from around the system on that. So the motion, the item that I will entertain the motion for includes all of those except the BM. Is there a BM in Sound Design and Technology, University of Montana? Is there a motion? Moved by Regent Dombrowski. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Regent Buchanan.
Chair Lozar, the only comment I would make related to that adjustment is the recognition and collaboration among the campus participants. There's a lot of enthusiasm about that moving forward, but with deference to some more questions about market demand, thought it was an appropriate move. So thanks for your explanation and to the participants involved.
Wonderful. Thank you, Regent Buchanan. Any other discussions or corrections from the board? Any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the Budget Administration and Audit Committee. We have a number of items in front of the board today. The first one is the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Regent Sexton. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? All right, seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to action item A, request for approval of the MUS operating budget. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Regent Dombrowski. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? All right, seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action item B, request for authorization to plan, program, and design up to 5 new nursing education facilities at MSU Bozeman. I will entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Regent Sexton. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Yes, Regent Dombrowski.
I'd like to make the regents aware I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Thank you, Regent Dombrowski. Any other discussions or corrections from members of the board? Regent
Thank you.
Rogers.
I'll also be abstaining from this vote, given that my client is a healthcare system in Gallatin County.
Wonderful. I appreciate transparency on your abstention. Is there any other discussions or corrections from members of the board? Any discussions or corrections from campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Okay. Seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. All right, motion passes. Moving on to action item C, budget or request for authorization to plan and design the relocation of the facilities maintenance yard and ancillary facilities at MSU Bozeman. I will entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Regent Rogers. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? All right, seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. All right. 2-year and Community College Committee does not have any action items before us this morning, though we do have one more action item in front of the board. As you can see on the agenda, that is for a student appeal. You have each received the commissioner's decision and the written appeal with supporting documents submitted by the student. The issue before the board is solely whether to hear the appeal at a later meeting. Our appeal policy does not require us to accept an appeal if we are satisfied with the commissioner's review and decision. The sole question is whether any regent believes the issues addressed in the commissioner's decision need further review by the board. So if you do not wish to hear the appeal at the board level, it is not necessary to make a motion. A lack of action on our part will signify our decision not to hear the case. Just a reminder, the appeal is confidential. The board will not address the student or individual involved by name, identify the campus involved, or discuss the facts or specific issues. Are there any general questions as to this procedure before we consider the appeal? Not seeing any questions, I will entertain a motion to hear the student appeal. All right, there being no motion to hear this appeal, the request that we entertain this appeal is denied. The commissioner's decision is upheld. Well, that wraps up all of our action items for the September Board of Regents meeting. I certainly want to again let the students, the staff, and faculty know how excited we are that the new academic year has started, and we look forward to seeing all the successes, all the collaboration across the university system, and we really look forward to a strong academic year for our university system. I will turn it back over to Chancellor Cook to have the final word, and just want to underscore our gratitude for you hosting the Board of Regents meeting at your university. Thank you, Chancellor
Thank you,
Cook.
Chair Lozar. It has been our pleasure to have you with us for the last day and a half, and not only have you on campus, but out to be able to explore Butte America a little bit. We're incredibly happy to be face-to-face with you all, as well as having students on our campus, and we sincerely appreciate the support, the leadership, the passion, and the commitment that you all provide to the state of Montana and the Montana University system, and look forward to a great year. We do have lunch over in the Big Butte Highlands room if you want to pick up a box lunch before you go. And thank you for allowing us to actually have a Board of Regents meeting face to face. It's been really our pleasure to have you here. So thank you.
meeting is adjourned.